Hello Jurassic fans, in today's video I'm going to be making an enclosure for the Oviraptor in Prehistoric Kingdom. The Oviraptor was added recently in the new update, and its model looks absolutely glorious, so I had to rush over and make an enclosure for it. As you can see, I already had most of the base of the enclosure kind of already planned out with some fencing and terrain and water and stuff, but there was a lot more that I wanted to add. So I started by just smoothing out those ledges that I had so they weren't so steep and sharp, giving the dinosaurs a little bit of an easier way of getting up. Then I used different types of logs, branches, rocks, just various natural decorations to kind of simulate a sort of land bridge, per se, across these gaps. Just areas where the dinosaurs could cross from this lower section up into the upper section without having to go all the way around to the sloped terrain. To be honest, I didn't even know, as I was making this, if the dinosaurs would actually be able to walk on those different types of decorations, but it ended up working fairly well. And you'll see that kind of more towards the end. But I continued using random logs and branches to give this area more texture and life. After I got done building those bridges, I used some of those new sandstone decorations, which I think are incredible. I spread them around the enclosure in different sizes using different types of decorations, and I think they go really well with not only this enclosure, but just desert enclosures in general, and they're a really good addition to the game. Those of you that have been keeping up with my other Prehistoric Kingdom videos know that I'm slowly adding each of these enclosures to a massive park, which I plan to do a huge tour of once I run out of species or ideas, things to build, whatever. This section, which is clearly different from the other sections, is going to be a strictly desert or arid theme with tall rock formations and dry open plains. Additionally, I'll be adding other sections too, including a tundra section and a lush jungle section. And when complete, the park will be split between all four sections, each its own biome and theme. The other enclosures that I've built so far for Prehistoric Kingdom have been part of the coastal/boreal biome. Obviously, I couldn't leave the ground of the enclosure just completely blank and barren, but I also didn't want it to be super lush, so I used some cacti and desert shrubs in specific parts, with this little chasm having more lush foliage than the upper part, as if over time water running off into that crevice would have caused more foliage growth than the other sections of the enclosure. Once I felt like I had enough foliage for the enclosure, I worked on some of the final details, basically just sprucing up the enclosure, making it look extra fancy. I started by creating this cliff walkway sort of thing with flat rocks, to give an area where the Oviraptors could walk across the slope without just, tilting at a very awkward angle, and walking straight down the super steep slope. And then I also used rocks to barricade these corners where they could potentially glitch out through the fencing, or areas that just didn't seem like they needed to have accessibility. There was no reason for the Oviraptors to be going down into this little corner, so I figured I might as well just cover it up and make it more likely for them to, adventure around the more open areas where the guests could actually see them. And also just adding layers and layers of rocks, it just adds more of that realistic terrain that you don't get really in a lot of games like this. It's one of the reasons I like being able to place decorations inside each other without constraints, because you can really just get that last little bit of detail. I also created some patchy, sandy areas where the terrain was different colors. That's just more of that realistic detail that I wanted to add. I maybe went a little above and beyond here, but overall I think it turned out pretty well in the end. Your feedback is also always appreciated. If you think something just does not look great, tell me in the comments, and I'll look for ways to improve on that in the future. As far as the terrain and like the enclosure in itself, that part was pretty much done. Now for the basic dinosaur needs, the food, water, bedding, all that good stuff. Oviraptors eat fruit and insects in this game, so I made a couple of each. I did 2 of the rectangular fruit feeders with an overabundance of watermelon for whatever reason, and I did one of the little circular insect feeders as well. And then I added some water dishes as well because, well, nobody wants to drink gross, murky, sandy, sitting water in the middle of the desert, and clean water is a right, even for dinosaurs. So after placing the water, I added some termite mounds for a little bit of enrichment. Don't want those dinosaurs getting too bored now. Also, I realized while building this that I haven't really done any experimenting with the nesting system in this game yet. So I figure, what's a better dinosaur to use the nesting for than the one that was accused for stealing eggs? So I put a couple of nests underneath the viewing platform, under some shade and cover, where, just for imagination's sake, the Oviraptors would feel more comfortable laying their eggs out of, away from prying eyes and potential predators. So I placed those nests, and then I also placed some straw beds throughout the enclosure, just in random spots. That way there would be plenty of areas for the Oviraptors to rest and lay down, some of them out in the open and some of them under shade and cover, like this cave here. And then for the final touch of the enclosure, I used some canopies, and I placed them right next to the viewing platform, right up against the enclosure fencing, covering up one more straw bed section. That way there would be just one more area out of the sun for the Oviraptors to get some shade. And I did cover up the gaps in between those boards with a rope, like cover canopy thingy, because the gaps weren't really doing much for the sun, and this was intended to be shade after all. So after I had that done, the enclosure was basically complete. There was nothing more I could think of that I wanted to add, and I also didn't want to go too crazy on this enclosure because it is the first of the desert enclosures. There's going to be much more to see, and I don't want to waste all of my creative ideas on a singular enclosure. But yeah, that's everything for this enclosure. Now I'm just going to release the Oviraptors in there, and we'll watch them run around and get accustomed to their new home. The juveniles are adorable. They are covered in fluffy, downy feathers, just like modern day birds when they're born. So I thought that was a really awesome and probably pretty realistic creative choice on their part. I did a couple of juveniles, and I also added some parents in there as well to raise the young. And like I said, these models are just incredible. They look so good. And I'm interested to see if they end up adding more skins and variants for these. I think that'd be cool. So that's everything for this enclosure. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please consider leaving a like and or subscribing, or don't. It's completely up to you. But I hope that you guys stay tuned for other videos in the future. And yeah, see you around.